We're going to first start off with a presentation of a proclamation, and our Assemblyman Jeff Aubrey is here who will present the proclamation.
Thank you so very much, and thank you for allowing us to interrupt your proceedings. However, we had a sort of a special occasion that there was a gentleman who we wanted to honor who started out in Buffalo and then ended up in New York City. And in the meantime, between that, Imhotep Gary Bird has done such great work on the air. So we thought that it would be appropriate for him to come this weekend in the midst of Black History Month, in the midst of the Caucus Association weekend, in the midst of electing the first African American speaker to the New York State Assembly, to come and we would give him the award and some recognition for the tremendous work that he's done on the radio in the city of New York. And Senator Stuart Cousins has joined with me in that, and so we have citations and proclamations, but more than that, we wanted to give Imhotep an opportunity just to talk to us a bit about what it means to go from Buffalo to New York City.
I am truly honored today for obvious reasons. It certainly is good to be above ground and good to be honored in the process for the work that you've done. But also it's a marker for me and for the broadcast, and that my roots, as you just heard, are in Buffalo, New York. And so it only dawned on me in the last couple of years. So what we're about to now celebrate, and this is the beginning of it with these presentations, is 50 years as a licensed broadcaster in the state of New York. And let me say that I'm very pleased that Hank Cameron, an educator from School 37, Buffalo, New York, and also a broadcaster, started me out so young, because that's a long time. I was 14 years old when Mr. Cameron discovered me in a community center in Buffalo on Lemon Street called the Neighborhood House. The Neighborhood House was so close to where I lived that if you hit a stopwatch, I would be there before the stopwatch hit 1 minute. That's how close it was. And it was in that neighborhood house, a place for us to go, a place we could play basketball, a place that we could be in plays. I was discovered in a play in the neighborhood house because I'd been trained by General Bass, a famous educator from Buffalo, New York, who trained me as a public speaker. And so I knew how to, quote, throw my voice. So I kind of threw my voice out, and the broadcaster, Mr. Cameron, looked at me very sharply. And he said after the play was done, they were recording it for WUFO, our first black radio station. And he said, you have to stay. I need to talk to you. And he said to me at age 14 years old, have you ever thought of going into broadcasting? And as it turns out, that began the genesis of my career and becoming a broadcaster by the age of 15, 16 years old on WUFO. And so that tenure, of course, set the trajectory for literally everything that I do in my life today. And I can look back now, and it's, I think, very important to be here to say this. I can look back now and really know that the neighborhood house is really the place that was responsible for me being able to be where I am and subsequently who I am today in my career. Hank Cameron, as an educator, coming into the community from the local radio station, taking an interest in a young kid at 14 years old and telling me, if you're willing to get up at 4 o'clock every morning for an entire summer, I will train you to be a broadcaster. I was on the porch at 3 a.m. waiting every day. And hence, it all began from there. And later in New York City, Mr. Jerry Bolding took a chance on a young kid, 19 years old, and brought me to New York City as the youngest broadcaster in the history of New York City. And that is what it is. So this marker of what's happening today means a lot to me. My grandmother, Lori Bird, who raised me along with my mother, gave me at age 9 and 10 years old a Polaroid land camera. And I was a kid, so I had to try to hold this thing. She gave me 2 tape recorders. She gave me a record player and an 8-inch portable TV. So my room, before I ever entered broadcasting, looked like a broadcast studio, literally. And because of Mr. Cameron's concern, and because of the ability that General Bass had to inspire young people like myself, so between my grandmother, between Hank Cameron, between General Bass, it was that foundation that really essentially is what I took into New York City, and really this award coming as it does from the state, I think is something that, with all the presentations and awards that I received over the years, and I've been blessed to receive many, it means so much to me, because I realized in the last 2 years, I'm not just a broadcaster in New York City, I'm a broadcaster with a history in the great New York State. So it's exciting for me to be here, and I'm honored certainly to receive the award, and look forward, perhaps in the future, being able to consolidate together in a way where we're operating in a single accord and able to consolidate our power in more important ways. That politic I learned from the former Deputy Speaker, Mr. Arthur Eve, who gave me that training that all of what I was doing in New York City was fine, but he said it won't mean anything if you don't understand what's going on up in Albany. I do, and because I do, I certainly cherish and accept with graciousness this wonderful moment. Thank you all for being here. Thank
you, Hotep. I'm Senator Andrea Stewart Cousins. I'm the minority leader of the state Senate. And I want you to know, and all of you do know, that because there are two houses, nothing is really ever complete unless both houses bless the activity. So my wonderful counterpart, Mr. Aubrey in the Assembly, has given a resolution very looked at. And of course, our chair of our conference weekend, Crystal Peoples Stokes, is here. She's an Assemblywoman. I know she's one that makes this all happen. And, you know, giving us an opportunity before we hear from our wonderful mayors, an opportunity to congratulate this trio, this voice of the African-American diaspora, but we know the power of what he does on the GDP really, okay, you always say, just reverberates throughout the state. So it is my pleasure to, again, join with the Assembly in congratulating you, Hotep. Thank you. I told him when I thought I knew him, because you hear his voice all the time. You think he's like just a friend. And he's that approachable. So he is. Continue, my brother, to tell our story so well. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I want to welcome everybody to this Mayoral Forum. My name is Latoya Joyner, and I am a newly elected Assemblywoman from the Bronx, the 77th Assembly. Our Assemblywoman, Crystal Peoples Stokes, to give welcoming remarks, and then I will introduce the panelists.
Thank you very much, Assemblymember Latoya. We are so happy to have her and the other four women who recently joined our caucus. This is a very exciting weekend. It's our 44th annual. You all know that the reason why we put on this big policy discussion and have all these conversations going around on different topics and having gala events and youth summits, it's all in an effort to raise money to make sure when we get back to our districts, there's some young people that we can help go to college. And so for your help in helping us do that, we thank you. We thank you for your participation. We're glad that you're here. We're honored to have mayors of some of our great cities in the state of New York here with us to share. And I'm almost confident that after you hear from them speaking, there are going to be some questions. And I'm almost confident that we'll be happy to respond to them for you. Please enjoy yourselves, and thank you so much for participating in our caucus weekend.
It is wonderful that we have great local leaders with us for the 44th Annual Caucus Weekend. We appreciate your time and taking time off your busy schedules to be with us this afternoon and giving insight regarding your agendas that you will be pursuing this year. Looking at today's panel, we have a really interesting group of leaders who will present their views and let us know what their priorities will be as they seek to reduce income inequality, and increase opportunity for the New Yorkers that they represent. The future of our communities depend on their success success, and I am glad to moderate such an accomplished panel. With that, let me introduce the mayors that have joined us today. First, we will start with the leader of our whole city, Albany's Cathy Chian. This year, Cathy became the first woman in Albany's history. Previously, she served as the city's treasurer and chief fiscal officer, where she revamped the city's tax collection. She served on the boards of local business and development efforts. As an attorney, she started her career in the Albany office of Bond, Shenick, and King. Let's give Mayor Cathy Chian a round of applause. We are also joined today with lovely A. Warren, Mayor of Rochester, New York. Born and raised in Rochester, Mayor Lovely A. Warren is the first female mayor of Rochester and second African-American mayor. She has spent her time bringing real-life solutions to education and the community. Lovely served on the city council representing the Northeast District, where she was later elected city council president. She is the youngest city council president in the city's history. She was also the president of Rochester Black Bar. Let's give her a round of applause. Also here today with us is Byran W. Brown, Mayor of Buffalo. Mayor Byran Brown is the first African-American mayor of Buffalo. He has pushed forward key policies and has served as the steward of growing economic development in Buffalo. Previously, he served as the first African-American elected to state senate outside of New York City. Let's give him a round of applause. These are just a few of the accomplishments of the trailblazers that have joined us today this afternoon. And at this time, we will now hear from our panelists about their progressive agendas and their strategies for a successful story. And I will start with Mayor Byran Brown. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming today, and let me thank the Black, Puerto Rican, Asian state legislators for the 44th annual Caucus weekend. Let me also thank my Assemblymember Crystal People-Stokes, for her leadership for the second year cheering Caucus weekend. It seems to get bigger and better and more productive every single year, so thank you all for your leadership. Let me apologize for my attire, first of all. Somebody said to me as I was running through the halls trying to get here on time, did Buffalo send all of its snow to Boston? Well, I am late because unfortunately Buffalo did not send all of its snow to Boston. I anticipated being here from Friday through Monday, but because the snow is still continuing to fall in Buffalo, and we are running out of places to put it, just like they are in Boston, I needed to stay back in the city today to make sure that the crews, the private contractors, everything was working. Feeling significantly confident that things are working, that we're moving the snow, that we're picking up the snow. I headed out early this morning, and it took me, usually this is about an hour ride, it took me about an hour and 45 minutes to get from Buffalo to Rochester. So didn't have time to change, but very honored, very pleased to be here. And certainly, again, very pleased to be with my dynamic colleague mayors. I am very proud of these women who are first in the state, first in their community, and I'm very honored to be on this panel with them. We have focused, I'm probably now one of the most senior mayors in the state of New York, first elected in 2006. I'm in my third term as mayor, and we've worked very aggressively to focus on a progressive agenda for our city. On the 20th, this Friday coming, I have my State of the City address, and the theme of the State of the City address is going to be building a city of opportunity for everyone. And that is really key in Buffalo because since 2012, we have been blessed with amazing economic development activity in the city. Since 2012 to present, there is almost $6 billion of economic development projects that have begun literally transforming the city. Those $6 billion in projects over the next few years will produce more than 12,000 new jobs for the residents of our community. But thank you. My vision, my goal, my focus is to make sure that those jobs that are being created and those opportunities that are coming online benefit every single community in our city. We have established a number of strategies to try to accomplish that, partnering with our colleagues in government at the federal level, at the state level, and at the local level. And I look forward to talking a little bit more about that as the panel goes forward. So thank you all very much for being here.
Thank you, and it was really a pleasure to be on this panel with fellow mayors who, when I listen to them, I get wonderful ideas, and the focus on connecting the people who live in our community with the opportunities that we see growing in each of our regions is critically important. That's the whole reason that we do economic development. So over the past year, in my first year in office, we really worked to try to put together a team of people and a consensus among our leadership team to understand what we really are trying to accomplish in city government. We're in the service business. This is about public service. And it's about ensuring that we are allocating resources, not just in the way that we always did because we've always done it, but that we're allocating resources in a way that is just, in a way that takes into account making sure that our underserved communities are on track to being able to participate in and take advantage of the great development that we're seeing. And sometimes that requires us to do a lot of little things. You know, mayors love to cut ribbons. You know, you go to a groundbreaking and you have these big splashes. But we really focus first on community engagement and empowerment, because this is a city where, for many, many years, very intentionally, there was not a lot of community engagement. In fact, you know, if you were involved in a neighborhood association, you know, you were kind of persona non grata in City Hall. You were perceived as a problem, a complainer, not as somebody who was bringing forward what the community needed, what you were seeing on the street that was needed in your neighborhood. So we started very purposefully engaging the community in ways that they had not been engaged before, and empowering them to then take action when we identify challenges and identify needs. And in seeing that, we started to see things come out of our neighborhoods that came from the people who lived there and who were engaged there. And for me, that's the progression. It starts with community engagement, which then proceeds to neighborhood development, doing things in neighborhoods that come out of that community engagement, and then you move on to economic development. Because economic development will come when you have a strong, engaged community. And so connecting our residents to the jobs that are coming, to the jobs that are here. We've seen a huge tech boom in this region. We've seen a huge growth in jobs, but we still haven't seen that connection between residents living in our most underserved communities and those opportunities that exist. So one of the things that we were very pleased to accomplish this year was that we opened a campus center. And it is a college campus building that is located in the South End, next to the Albany Housing Authority housing. And it's really focused on ensuring that residents who live in public housing, who live in our historically underserved neighborhoods, have access to the opportunity to train for and be prepared for the jobs that are here. These aren't jobs that are in the future, they are jobs that are here right now. And just this week, we opened an Attain Lab that allows individuals to get the IT skills that they need. There is a kitchen going in, culinary arts will be part of the program, and then we also will be teaching, training people on how to clean rooms and become clean room techs. We have one of the largest chip fab facilities in the world located in this region, just about a half hour north of here. And so we are putting together more and more strategies that are really focused on that feet on the street and on making sure that we don't leave anybody behind as we look to grow and to really explode jobs here in the capital region.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am so excited to be here and want to acknowledge, of course, Assemblywoman Crystal Peoples-Stokes for allowing me to participate in this panel and acknowledge my other mayors who are here who are doing great things in their city. I'm so excited about what's happening in Rochester, New York. We have some great challenges that we're facing as a community. Rochester is third in the nation for childhood poverty. And that statistic is what drives me to want to change our city, to do everything that I can to make it better. And so in the city of Rochester, we have outlined and started to look at 3 things, and that's jobs, safe neighborhoods, and education. When it comes down to jobs, we have traveled the country to look at what other cities are doing to actually impact the most challenged communities. And we found a market-driven co-op model in Cleveland, Ohio, called the Evergreen Co-op. And what that they did in Cleveland was they went into one of the most challenged areas and they built a co-op model where the residents actually get a chance to work in that business, but also buy an interest in that business as well. And so if you own the business and it's in your neighborhood, then you are more invested in that business. And we want to bring that model to Rochester. And we recently put out an RFP, and the designer of that particular co-op is going to come to Rochester and help us develop that model. Rochester is also crisscrossed with a broadband infrastructure in our downtown that we are going to market and utilize to try to attract new businesses into our community. We believe that the industry of tomorrow and of today are looking for broadband access, and we want to give it to them. We're going to work with our county executive to make sure that we do everything possible to bring new businesses to Rochester. This past year, we were able to be one of 12 cities designated as an investing in manufacturing community partnership by the federal government, giving us preferential treatment to $1.3 billion in federal funds to focus on our photonics and optics industries. One of the things that we noticed is that when we talk about innovation and a progressive agenda, government is usually not necessarily a part of that. And so I started the Office of Innovation and Strategic Initiatives, and that gives us an opportunity to look at those new innovative ideas that really don't necessarily fit into the governmental box. And we are able to hire those new, young, bright minds that want to think outside the box to bring those new businesses to your area, to push your community forward. And we were able to access and receive a $1.9 million grant from Bloomberg Philanthropies to basically help that Office of Innovation and Strategic Initiatives. When we talk about safe neighborhoods and community policing, Rochester was basically policed by 2 sessions, and our officers were just going from call to call to call. They really didn't have time to build those relationships with the neighborhoods, to build those relationships with the businesses that are located in your neighborhoods. And so we're going back to a model where we are returning our officers to the street and going to a 5-section police model, which will help them patrol a smaller area in our city. We also started a program called Clergy on Patrol. In some of my most challenged neighborhoods, I have 10 churches on one street. And I needed the clergy to know that we needed them to come outside the walls of the church and actually get out on the streets with our officers to build those relationships. patrol, our clergy and our officers go out into the neighborhoods, they knock on doors, they talk to people, they give them access to information and resources that the city has to offer, but also our community has to offer. And it says to the community that we're working together to try to change what's happening. One of the other things that we're doing, investing in safe neighborhoods, is demolishing dilapidated homes, and also investing in our commercial corridors by investing in our facades and helping our businesses improve the exterior of their businesses. We're also looking at education, and when you talk about education, you have to talk about school choice. Now, I often get in trouble for talking about school choice, but I believe that poor parents should get the same access to the same education that rich parents get. We have to look at it and give every child the opportunity to succeed, and so I believe that parents should be given choices. And that's why I'm supporting a tax credit, and so since I'm here in Albany, there's a tax credit bill that will allow companies and individuals to receive a tax credit for contributing to certain scholarship programs. And so I hope that legislation passes this year. And so I'm looking at it from as a city, we're also investing in our libraries and recreation centers in new and innovative ways. In the past, recreation centers have just been about play. Our recreation centers will not be just about basketball anymore. We have to bring some much needed educational programs to our recreation centers. In the summertime, 300 to 400 children a day attend some of our recreation centers. And so we're going to bring some STEM programming into the recreation centers to help curb that summer learning loss that many of our children experience. And so I'm so excited about the future of Rochester. I'm glad to be back home here. I spent 14 years here as Chief of Staff to Assemblyman David Gant, and it's good to be here in Albany as well as Cathy Chian. We both attended Albany Law School.
It's good to have you all here as well in Albany. At this time, we will now open it up to the audience to ask any questions you may have. Yes.
Hi, my name is Reverend Pleasure. I'm from Rochester, New York, and that is my distinguished and lovely Warren is my mayor. I'm excited about all the things that we're doing in Rochester with the clergy patrol team and things of that nature. But I have a concern for the whole panel because we all have this problem, homicide. It's a major issue in the city of Rochester, New York. I'm the president and founder of an organization there that has a real good cliche, and people catch it real quick: stop killing, start chilling. It's designed to help those who lose loved ones to violence in our city. I've joined partnership with Mothers in Charge, Dorothy Spikes Johnson out of Philadelphia, and we're rallying in Washington, D.C. on June 6th in regards to homicides, and we're asking Assembly to address the fact that homicides is also a health issue. It's a major problem in the community in which we live, and dilapidating communities, of course, is always affected by lack of education, lack of jobs, and things like that. So my question to you guys is that since we're making this initiative, how can we get you to support our efforts and bring as many people to the Lincoln Memorial at the Reflecting Pool on June 6, 2015, acknowledging that this is not just an epidemic, it's a health issue that causes homicides in the cities in which we live.
What you mentioned with Reverend is a national problem, it is a national crisis, and it is a health epidemic. I want to just recognize Assemblywoman Crystal Peoples-Stokes because a few years ago in our community, she brought together members of the community and health providers to really educate the health providers on the fact that this is a trauma not just for the individual who has been killed, but it's a trauma for the entire family. And the entire family has to be treated, has to be recognized. So I just want to thank her for that. There are a number of things that we are doing in the city of Buffalo, but the call that you made for going to Washington to talk about this problem on June 6th, I think is critically important. With everything that we do in Buffalo, we have now, at the end of this year, we'll have 220 surveillance cameras throughout the city. We have an organization similar to Clergy on Patrol called Peacemakers, where we have men and women in the community from various violence prevention organizations, members of the clergy that do patrol, that do prevention, intervention with young people. We have increased our spending on summer youth employment and training to the highest level in the history of the city of Buffalo. And even with that and more, last year our city suffered 62 homicides. Most of them with handguns, probably 90% of them black on black or Hispanic on Hispanic homicides that occurred in our city. So it is an epidemic in our city, and it is a national epidemic. For the last 20 years, the city of Buffalo, probably for the last 25 years, the city of Buffalo averages about 50 homicides a year. There were some years prior to my election that number reached as high as 100 homicides. We've been as low as 30, but the average over about a 25-year period of time is 50 homicides a year. We say in our community that any one homicide is one too many. This year I'm going to announce at my State of the City that we are going to add more jobs for young people this year between the ages of 14 to 21, and we are going to target the most at-risk young men and young women in our community, similar to a program that was done in the city of Chicago, where they targeted the most at-risk young people who are out of school, young people who have been suspended from school a number of times, young people who have been found with handguns already, and we will put those young people into employment and training opportunities to give them the opportunity to earn legal money, to do something productive in the community, and match them with mentors that can alter and hopefully try to change that behavior. The other thing that we saw, and we really listened to the families of victims of homicide, we found that we really were not engaging with the families enough. So just recently, we had a meeting with about 50 family members of homicide victims in our city. And we made a commitment to those family members that we would interact with them at least twice during the course of the year, to listen to them, to listen to any information that they get back about those crimes, and be more proactive in working with the families. So those are some of the things that we do in the city of Buffalo, but we want to support your call to rally in Washington. It is a problem in our city, it is a problem in cities across America, and we need to do something about it. So thank you very much.
In Albany, we've embraced the public health model in addressing violence, particularly in neighborhoods where we know we have vacant and abandoned buildings. We know that there are magnets for trouble, and we know that the root cause is lack of opportunity. So, you know, the most important thing that we can do is to focus on how we connect young people to jobs and to opportunities. And we've had a long-standing summer youth employment program in the city of Albany, but it was really perceived by many as a way to simply keep kids off the street. That's not a model for success, and that's not a model that tells our children that we care deeply about them and that we want to instill in them the skills and the ability that they are going to need to succeed in the workplace. And so we, under new leadership of our summer youth employment program, are really focusing on making that program about getting skills, getting the soft skills and the hard skills that you need to succeed in the workplace. Because we need to send a message to our children that we're investing in them. This is an investment in them, and they are worth investing in. But I think in networking with the different, in Albany we call it Cure Violence. It's based on the Chicago ceasefire model, where we have formerly incarcerated individuals who are working really literally day and night on our streets when there is an act of violence, intervening with the victim, intervening with everybody involved in that incident so that we can prevent violence from happening. Then we have, within 48 hours, we will show up on a street corner where that violent act occurred, demanding that our streets be safe, and telling that community that they deserve to be safe, and telling our children that they deserve to be safe. So, our police department has very much embraced this model. They're looking at rolling out some really phenomenal initiatives this year, because we have a police chief that believes that you have to build trust within the community. That is the #1 thing that you need to do in order to be safe, is creating that trust in the community, and we're committed to doing that. But I think getting a rallying cry out to all of these different public health model programs and initiatives that are out there, that are funded by the state, and we're very much appreciative of the support that we see in the Assembly and the Senate for these models, to come together, and no matter what their name is or what we call them, but to see that we're all working to do the same things and to bring those all together to rally. And I think it's very important. It is a national issue.
In Rochester, we started something called Operation Transformation Rochester, where we are not only looking at our young people, but also our adults. What we found is that a number of people had dropped out of high school, did not have their high school diploma, and wanted to come back, they just didn't know how. And so we started to bring people in and give them mentors, as well as work with our employers and our universities and our colleges to help these young adults find a way back to self-sufficiency. And so we're working on that. We're also working on youth employment and making sure that our young people have summer jobs, but also jobs throughout the year. But one of the big things that we focused on this past year was accountability. Our clearance rate, our murder clearance rate in Rochester this past year was almost double the national average. And the reason why is because the police department and the community work together to hold people accountable. If you commit a crime on our streets and a murder, then we're going to come hell or high water and bring you to justice. And I think that that is the way that you start to prevent people from taking that gun and shooting it, when they know that they will be charged and they will be brought to justice.
1, 2, and 3.
Hi, how are you? My name is Andrew Feedy. I'm a young attorney here in New York City. I work for a Big 4 consulting firm. What I've done is I've started working with the Trayvon Martin attorney, Ben Crump, and we've launched this new think tank to address the Eric Garner and Mike Brown case, the problems in those cases. And we actually brought a lot of young professionals from, all Harvard Law, Yale Law. I went to WashU Law. We have some Albany Law people there as well. So we're from all over, and we just really came together because we saw a lot of the protesters protesting. However, we didn't hear a lot of legislative solutions. So I guess my first question is, what does your legislative agenda, how does it address the issue of police brutality and police reform? Because we take the position that no matter where you live at in the city, you deserve to be treated with the same respect, the same dignity, the same professionalism, no matter if you're in the Bronx, Harlem, Brooklyn, or on the Upper West Side. So what we want to make sure is that everybody is treated fairly. So I guess, like I said, the first question is, what does your current legislative agenda do to address police brutality or police reform? Also, if it doesn't specifically address that, what do you have planned to do to bring these communities together, communities of color and local law enforcement? What are your plans to try to bridge this divide so we can work together and move together in the future for positive change?
Thank you for the work that you are doing and that other attorneys are doing across the country in the aftermath of the Mike Brown and Trayvon Martin and Eric Garner cases. In Buffalo, we have one of the strongest and most entrenched police unions in the entire country. One of the things that we would like to see change, and and when I say that, let me also say that we do have a lot of good police officers that do the right thing and want to do the right thing. But one challenge that we have in Buffalo that we think complicates the disciplinary process is that all of our officers, rank and file, patrol officers, and supervising officers are all in the same union. That needs to change. That is a major problem. It is hard to supervise someone when you have union pressure coming down on you from being in the same union with the people that you have to supervise. That is one thing that we're going to be working very aggressively to change in the city of Buffalo. We think that the rank and file police officer and the supervisory officers need to be in separate unions. We also, like is happening in Albany and Rochester, we know that community outreach is critically important. After the Eric Garner case, we had one of the largest community meetings in the entire nation where we partnered with the clergy in Buffalo, the Concerned Clergy Coalition of Western New York. And we had a meeting of about 400 members of the community to talk about policing and police community issues in our city. It was very telling. We had all of the management of our police department at that meeting. We thought it was important for them to hear directly from the community how people were feeling and how people were perceiving policing in our city. Out of that, we are going to use many of the recommendations that we got from the community to actually reform some of our policing practices and procedures in the city of Buffalo. We have posted the answers that came out of that meeting to the questions that citizens raised on the city website so that anybody in Buffalo and across the nation can see the questions that citizens asked and the answers that we provided to those questions. I think another critically important thing is diversity of recruitment and diversity in hiring. In Buffalo, we were under a federal court order at one time because of discrimination in the police department to hire African Americans and then later Hispanics and women. And once that court order was lifted, we found those numbers begin to roll back. So we have identified barriers in our recruitment process, in our selection process, that has made it difficult to bring more minorities onto our police department. We're going to work to eliminate those barriers so that we can have a department that more reflects the diversity of our community.
In Albany, I'll talk about three things very quickly, because I know we're running out of time here, but we have a community police review board where complaints, if people believe they've been mistreated by the police, they can file complaints. And I'm very pleased to say that we actually have mediation as part of that process. And that was done voluntarily by our police department. It's really unheard of. Typically, it's something that gets negotiated. You get a lot of pushback. from the police union to mediation, but because of the strides that we've made in building trust, in focusing on training and on focusing on neighborhood engagement, we have arrived at that voluntarily. And so that mediation has just started this year. The mediators had to be selected and trained, and so now we have mediation as part of that process. The other thing that we have in Albany, in addition to that review board, is something called APPAC, and that is an advisory committee made up of residents of our community who advise our police department and who are liaisons with the community on broader policy issues. So we have a complaint-driven board, but then we also have APPAC that's out doing outreach. And at those meetings, APPAC runs these community meetings. There are police officers that are there to answer questions. And so that, and the policies that, and the priorities of our police department and the strategic plan of our police department is driven by the advice that they get from APPAC. And then I'll say that in addition to that, even before the verdicts and the decisions not to proceed both in Ferguson and in New York City, there had been a meeting that was scheduled by members of our Common Council with police officers and members of the community to talk about the relationship between our police officers and men of color. And that meeting occurred. It was painful. I will tell you, it was a painful meeting. It is difficult to listen to the experiences that men in our community have had. But there were also police officers who spoke as well. The decision was made after that meeting that probably smaller forums will be more productive, and there have been some smaller gatherings with police officers. I think the police officers that were there felt a bit overwhelmed by the forum and the procedure, but we're learning, and it was a productive meeting, and out of that came the planning for another meeting that is going to be occurring, where we are going to bring the community together and make sure that people understand what the police review board does. There were a lot of people at the meeting who said, I don't know anything about it. So we've got to do a better job of making it easier to file complaints. So we're going to focus on that in this community meeting. We're going to focus on know your rights, because we have a huge effort underway in our schools to know your rights. But what I said to our police chief was, I want for our police officers to see the same training. I want us to agree, right, that this is what a young person or any person should expect and know when they have an interaction with the police. And I want our police to be endorsing what it is that we're out there doing. Let's bring the community together. This shouldn't be controversial or difficult. And then the third thing that would come out of that is, how do we have this ongoing dialogue about getting to the root causes of many of the challenges that we see in our neighborhoods. And it comes back to access to jobs.
I got myself in a little bit of trouble after those verdicts. Just because I think that people want to know that the scales of justice balance, and when people feel like the scales of justice didn't balance, they want justice. So one of the things that we started doing in Rochester is bringing the community and clergy into the actual cadet classes, so that you have those conversations before your officers get out there on the streets, and that they understand what the expectations are from the community that they're going to be serving. And they have people out there in those communities that they know and can recognize, whether it's their clergy or just the grandmother that lives on that street that has a lot of issues, and then when they go to that door, they know who she is, they met her before. And so we started to bring them actually into the police cadet classes. We also put our cadets out on the streets into community meetings a lot earlier. And so they're just not being trained in a building. We want them actually on the streets working and talking to people as well. We're looking at body cameras, of course, but you know, with the Eric Gardner case, doesn't always come out the way that you think. It's also about accountability. And so, you know, the chief of police in Rochester and us, we have a conversation about when officers do not act in the appropriate way, then they have to be held accountable. And that's across the board. The community and the police department have to work together.
we need our police officers. When something happens, you call 911. You know, I tell our residents this all the time. You're gonna pick up the phone, you're gonna call 911, you're gonna expect them to come. But we have to allow them to do their jobs. When they come, we want them to do it in a way that's respectful. And so that's where this conversation between the community and the police department, actually by the new police reorganization, we will be able to build that. We also have a civilian review board in Rochester, and we revamped our recruitment process. When I was city council president, one of the things that we were also under a consent decree, and we're currently still under a consent decree. But the recruit classes were less than 3% minority and women for years. And nothing was being done to change that. And so we realized a couple of things that was going on, that we believed was going on. Number one, we were recruiting the wrong way. And so we changed the way we recruited. Also, a lot of the minorities and women that had gone through the process and had passed all of the physical and other agility tests, when they got to the psychological, they were disqualified. And the person that was testing them had been here for 20 years. And so we changed the person. And the last 3 years, our classes in both our fire department and police department have been the most diverse ever, where most of the classes have been more than 50% minority women.
One thing legislatively that you might want to look at that we are precluded legally, and as I understand it, the case law is a little muddy on this, about releasing police when we take action against a police officer. And so I think that that's the other piece of this, is that a person goes through the civilian police review board, and the police review board may find that the police officer acted improperly. But we can't disclose what disciplinary action is taken against that officer. And so I think if you look at that disclosure piece of it, because I would say our police chief is in favor of finding some way, some fair way to communicate back to the community, because the community then thinks, well, nothing happened. This officer did this, but nothing happened to them because we can't disclose what happened. So figuring out how do we communicate back to the community that we are holding people accountable in a way that is legal, and that we can, again, that accountability piece that Mayor Moore talked about.
I've actually been trying to meet with all three of you over the last several months, because I think the three of you, as well as your county executives, are going to be really key in persuading both the governor and the legislature to do what we need to do if we're truly going to eradicate HIV/AIDS here in New York State. So I would welcome, first of all, you encouraging the governor to release the blueprint and put some stuff in his 30-day amendments to actually actualize it. And then there's some really important things there that have to do with housing, that have to do with employment opportunity, that I think would be hugely beneficial to your municipalities as well as tending the epidemic.
Certainly be willing to meet with you with our housing people in the city of Buffalo. We have had a very aggressive focus on low and moderate income housing in our city. We have leveraged over $27 million that flows through the federal government and the state to create over $214 million of housing investment, safe, clean, affordable housing for over 1,400 individuals in our city. We're going to continue to build on that this year. Some of that housing is for persons who are living with HIV and AIDS, some for veterans, some for seniors. So I would love to meet with you and hear some of your strategies.
Relative to health and crime issues, do you think, or do you support, I suppose, that marijuana be legal and sold in stores right next to the...
I'm in favor of decriminalizing, I'm in favor of legalizing. I think the devil is in the details in how you do it, because it can create other issues. I am in favor of it, but I am also concerned about children at a certain age being able to get their hands on marijuana. I don't want to see that. I think we are seeing in other states where marijuana has been legalized, it is creating a variety of other difficulties when it comes to access, and people that we don't necessarily want to have access potentially having that access. But that being said, even though I'm a tough on crime guy, I think that there is a profit motive that drives health issues, that drives criminal issues. I'd like to see that profit motive taken out of the sale of marijuana, so I am in favor of legalization.
You know, the implementation and how it is done is really what then falls to mayors. So it's one of those things that seems easy enough to say, and seems that there should be a sensible approach that we can take, but it is going to take, I think, the efforts of a lot of people across a lot of different areas of expertise to determine how we would go about that process. Fortunately, others are ahead of us on this curve. I'm a big believer in not repeating failure, or copying failure. So looking at where those pitfalls have arisen and how they've been dealt with, you know, we won't be alone in doing that. And I think we are reaching a point in time where there's enough out there that we can start to look at and study and move forward.
I'd like to just take a moment and acknowledge the new speaker of the New York State Assembly. I agree with my colleagues here. I think that we need to proceed slowly. I think that the New York State Legislature just passed the medical marijuana, and they are going to deal with that this year. And we'll see how that goes, and if it is successful, then we can move towards decriminalizing. But I think that we have to take, you know, baby steps, because we want to make sure that what we do it the right way, and make sure that the people that are accessing this access it in a way that is not detrimental or harmful to anyone